Hey, Mr. Nudell, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to do a similar format to what we did Monday.
Okay.
We've got a number of questions here. We're going to take turns again in the same order and ask you a few questions. We again may ask follow-up questions pertaining to that question if we have any questions. So have any questions
Awesome.
before we get started?
No, I've got a couple at the end, and thanks for today. I appreciate the chance to be here, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Brittany.
Okay, first question. The superintendent and school board are mutually dependent. Neither can function productively without the support and cooperation of the other. As superintendent, what strategies would you use to develop and maintain a positive working relationship with the school board members collectively and individually?
I think first of all, it's to get to know each of you on a personal level as well. I've got 6 different individuals to get to know, and I look forward to that chance to do that, whether it's individual meetings or groups of 2 that we can meet in the office or meet over a cup of coffee and just get to know each other. I think it's also important for you to have an understanding of me as a person as well. Hopefully you'll see that I'm a kind, caring person that wants to work collaboratively with you and the administrative team and has the best interest of the Pelican Rapids community and district in mind. There's weekly communication that'll come your way, or more frequently if needed. Try to prepare you for each and every board meeting so you can do your homework ahead of time, so when we get to a public meeting, we all have the same background, the same information. I do know that I report to a board of 6. You're my boss, and I respect that. So I think it's just to get to know each other, know what we're all about in our missions, follow the district strategic plan and the goals of the district, to work together, to collaborate, and for you to hopefully have the trust in me. And I want to earn that trust from you, that I'll represent your district well. I'll work hard for you, collaborate with the administrative team, work well with the staff, and I'm there for the students. So I hope that answered your question, that it's working together, and first thing we got to do is get to know each other a little bit first, and everybody's got different strengths that we bring to the table. As you work together as a board of 6 and work as one board, and the research I've done shows you guys are a very effective board and work well together, that's important. So yeah, I just hope that there's always that chance that if there's questions or thoughts or ideas or concerns, you would reach out to me so I can respond. Sometimes that'll be in a group email or message to you, which I know that's public information. And sometimes there needs to be individual phone calls or face-to-face meetings that way too.
Hi, Mr. Nudell, Brenda Olson here. A key component of the Pelican Rapids superintendent position is human resources. Describe your experience in human resource management and collective bargaining.
I've been trained in the Ventures for Excellence when I was in the principal role, and part of that was screening and looking for applicants and trying to find people that would fit well within your organization. I've been through and hired bus drivers to teachers to a principal, and all of those sort of things, and worked with hiring people. And I think the biggest job, or one of the biggest jobs, the role of a superintendent or administrator has, is hiring good people. If you do your homework up front, you hire good people, you bring them into your organization, you work with them, you lead them and support them. That's a huge deal. There has been times when I've had to work with employees on an improvement plan, or when people have been terminated, and that's never anything fun. But if it's what's best for the district and best for kids in our building, that has to happen. Again, I don't take pride in that. That's not anything I look forward to or like to do. But I wanted to share that so you knew that I'm willing to make a difficult decision and work with somebody if we have to. The human resource part, working with staff, hiring good folks, doing reference checks, interviews, all of those things are highly important, and as well as the growth and the mentorship throughout their tenure in the district. As to the negotiations part, I think was the second part of your question. When I was a principal, I sat in and doing some of my internship. I worked a little bit with negotiations. Now as a superintendent of Norman County East, I work with 3 board members who are on our Personnel and Finance Committee. The only union that we deal with at Norman County East is the teachers union. The cooks, the custodians, the bus drivers, everybody else is on independent contracts or not a union or not an organized bargaining group. Negotiations have went well. It's obviously something that's a little give and take on both sides, but when you have the best interest of the district in mind, I work with my school board. My past history is the board chair and the vice chair have really taken the lead with negotiations as me being a resource for them. And that's worked really well for me the last 4 years. We're usually quick to settle our contracts. We're one of the first in the area. Normally, we normally get them when the contract expires in June. We're normally done in March with their contracts. So a couple months in advance. So I think that shows that we can work well with staff. But I really like the fact that the board takes an active role, because if I need to work with teachers and administrators on a daily basis and lead them and work with them and guide them and support them, it's often hard to be the lead negotiator too. I guess I don't know the way you do things at Pelican, but that's just my past practice and past history.
Thank you. Next question. With the dramatic changes in education due to the COVID-19 virus, how will you include the positive experiences learned in online learning and communicating with students and parents moving forward?
Could you ask me the first part of that question again? I know we talked about the COVID and the distance learning. How will I do what?
Sure, I'll repeat the whole thing here. With the dramatic changes, yep, no problem. With the dramatic changes in education due to the COVID-19 virus, how will you include the positive experiences learned in online learning and communicating with students and parents moving forward?
I think this has been a challenge for all of us, that we've had the distance learning piece, and I know there's been some frustration with it. The interesting and fun part with it is we've had some staff that have really pushed themselves to use their technology skills to tape and video themselves doing some lessons and communicating and stuff with families. You know, the fall is still an unknown, whether we're going to have school or not, or if it's going to be distance learning. So I think we got to continue to train and work with our staff and prepare with that. I think the constant communication with families about what's going on and what we're doing as a district is important. All of those things can be communicated, you know, through our newsletter, through our website, through communication, the district voice automated call that goes out, school messenger. Just let them know things that we're working on in the communication there. I think we need to work with our teachers, though, to also support them in whatever training and things that they would need to help improve their instruction. I guess I'm really surprised and pleasantly surprised by our staff, by all of the growth that they've shown and willingness to do what's best for kids. You know, I have a hard time thinking those little kindergarten, first and second grade kids are really enjoying this distance learning after 6 weeks. That's got to be hard for them because they like the social aspect to school and being in the lunchroom and the playground and that sort of thing. But I think it's going to help us be more diligent about preparing our instruction and having things ready for families and students to learn. And I also think it gives parents a little bit of an idea of what teachers go through on a daily basis, preparing and teaching to 20 or 25 kids in a classroom. I think they have a solid understanding of what's going on, and they probably have a lot more appreciation for teachers and staff right now.
Thank you, Mr. Nudell. Next question here. This is a two-part question. What do you consider to be the two? Can you hear? I'm sorry, I was breaking up a little bit there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
I'll start from the beginning. What do you consider to be the 2 or 3 major concerns facing public education in Minnesota in the next 2 to 5 years? And how do these concerns relate to the Pelican Rapids School District?
Well, I think a big one is funding. As we look ahead to next year, there's talk of the state withholding, 10 or 20% of our funding just to help balance their books a little bit. And I know Pelican right now is struggling a bit financially. Things were tight. We had to pass an operating referendum. So if we only get 80% of our money for next year, where's that other 20% going to come from? So I think that's a big piece and something to look at. The district I'm currently working in, we built a fund balance up that's a pretty solid fund balance, and we've got about a 37% unfunded balance from our general fund in our coffers right now. So we're set up pretty well, I think. But that's definitely a concern is the funding piece. I also think the inequity of the 7-county metro area, how they receive funding and support from the state, where us out in greater Minnesota with our challenges and with being more remote and out in greater Minnesota, we don't quite receive the same equity in the funding that they do. So we work with MREA and they're our voice, and we tried to advocate for that. I think another big one is enrollment. A big piece of our funding comes from our student enrollment, and we're always looking to attract students. So I think reaching out to those families that are open enrolled out of our district, getting to know them a bit, enticing them to come back to get in the building of Pelican Rapids High School or Viking Elementary and come and see the great things that are happening in our school, to entice them to get back would be awesome. Every kid we get back in the building is going to help our fund balance. It's going to help the money that we generate, but it's also going to increase the number of students in our school, which is a loud voice for us, that we have more students attending and increasing and by offering good programs there. So I think the funding and the student enrollment are a couple of the really big ones.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nudell, what would you do to positively impact student achievement?
I think the first thing I need to do is work with the two administrators, Mr. Korf and Mr. Nelson, and get a sense to see what they think were areas where we could work to improve. Sit down and look at the MCA scores and the data and the graduation rate and all those sort of things, as well as the formative and summative assessments that are being done in the classroom. I think having some discussion with staff to see where some areas are, taking a look at curriculum, and trying to find where we're best spending our money to increase those scores. As I mentioned the other day, I think I mentioned it to the school board. I know I mentioned it to the community group that in my current district, we hired an RTI teacher, an interventionist that can help work with staff, help lead some paras to deliver instruction and work in small groups. So the first thing is just to sit, watch, and observe, and then lean on some of my experience of 22 years of administration, work with the administrative team, see where we're at, and see what things need to happen. Hopefully we're spending our money in the best possible way to increase learning and spending on our students efficiently. So hopefully that's something that's already in place. And then looking at the staff and putting people in the best spot where they need to be, and take a look at our curriculum and how can we differentiate, how can we work to meet the needs of those kids, get some involvement from staff, administration, parents, and move forward that way. So the first thing though, John, I think is just sit back and watch and see. I have no hidden agenda coming into Pelican Rapids other than I want to be part of your district because I live here and you do great things at your school and I want to be a part of that. But I come sit, watch, learn, observe, listen, and then move forward from there.
Okay, thank you.
Describe an example of your ability to simplify and communicate a complex matter to others.
Mike, I'm going to refer back to a year ago when we looked at our Gary Elementary School. We had an $800,000 roof we needed to put on a building that was a 1900s building. And everybody wanted to patch it and to save it and to look, and there was a real sense of community pride in Gary, which I totally understand. Small town, a couple hundred people, they wanted to save their school where the elementary was. We had some board meetings, some public meetings. I met with the city of Gary at an open forum one night in the gym where we passed a microphone around and everybody talked with me and a couple of the board members, sharing their reasons why they wanted to keep the building open. And we shared from an administrative point of view and the school board point of view, the reasons why that wasn't fiscally responsible to put a new roof on and to do those things. We started talking about the transition of moving all of our students into Twin Valley. all under one roof. And I think if you went back and called most of those people from Gary who maybe had a loud voice and a lot of passion for wanting to keep their building open, they were wonderful people, and I think they came a long way with understanding the need for shutting the building down and how putting $800,000 into an old building when we all fit into another would work. So I think it's having those face-to-face communications, putting things in the newspaper, advertisements or interviews on the radio. Shouldn't say advertisements, interviews on the radio, and just open, transparent dialogue so they knew where we were going. This was something that probably should have been done 6 to 12 years ago, but working with the board and building some trust with the people of Gary and Twin Valley through, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think through my leadership and through working with the board and having that trusting relationship with the community, things really went well. I've met with a couple parents here. It was early April, about the second or third week of our distance learning, and we were just talking, and they thanked me for how the process went and for being clear and concise and helping them understand, and to know that our monies that we would save from a district would be put into better programs to be put back to kids. You know, and through that process, we sold the building to the city, got it off our books as a school district, which was nice. The city wanted to use it. It just took some time, and right away, Mike, I probably was a little frustrated that I could see it, that it needed to happen, and a lot of people could, but giving people the time and the patience to hear them out and to understand what they were feeling to make this happen was really, really essential. Sometimes I'm head down, fanny up, and I want to get going and get things done. And it was a real learning experience for me to make sure we lay the groundwork, educate people, be patient with them, hear them out, understand, and then make our next step. And we really built some consensus and had a lot of support.
Thank you.
Describe your experience with negotiations. What role have you played in negotiations?
You know, I referred to that here just a little bit ago, and I'll just say, you know, I work with our business manager to look at our finances and to see where we're at there. We all know that the most of our personnel is about 80% of the district's funds go towards personnel and staffing. You know, built a strong working relationship with the union president at Norman County East. We've had 2 different ones in my 4 years there. And the negotiation process, I help lead and guide the board and answer some questions with that. It's worked out really well where the board chair has kind of taken the lead, and I'm there to help and support and to answer questions. As I mentioned earlier, it's my job to work with teachers and administrators and paras and bus drivers and everybody. But I think it's important that I'm there so they see that piece, but I just have never really led the negotiations and the dialogue back and forth. Certainly willing to give that a try if that's the model you use, but I know it's worked well the way we've had things right now, where our teachers, as I said, are usually settled by March when their contract expires in June. As to the other contracts with the paras, the cooks, the custodians, the secretaries, work with those individuals in there, even though they're not an organized bargaining group or a union per se, just to see what their needs are, what they would like to see different with their contract, and try to treat them fairly as well. Because I know hiring and maintaining and keeping good people is essential. And if you pay and treat people with respect, they're going to stick around, and that'll make things better throughout the district. I don't know if that really answered your questions about negotiations. I mean, I've been through 3 rounds of teachers negotiations as a superintendent, and sat in as some of it when I was doing my intern hours and stuff. So I don't know. I've never really led them and been the person to have the dialogue directly with the union. I've worked with my board on that.
What experiences have you had working with legislators, other superintendents, and other community leaders?
Hey, you know, I'm an active member, and our district is with MREA, the Rural Education Association, the Northwest Service Co-op, which, you know, Pelican Rapids is part of Lakes Country Service Co-op. Up in the northern quadrant of the state, we have the Northwest Service Co-op, where we go down and meet with our legislators every year. It's usually in February or March. I'm fortunate that Senator Kent Eakin from our area in Twin Valley he's got kids that go to our school, so I've got a good relationship with him and his cell number, and we talk frequently, as do I and Paul Marquardt. So we talk and share our voice, share our concerns, share what's going well. We've talked about this distance learning piece. Just talk about how things are growing in rural Minnesota as opposed to the difference in the 7-county metro area. Working with our city council, worked with Gary and Twin Valley City Council, and we closed a building and looked at expanding some of our grounds and stuff at Twin Valley. I've been part of city council meetings. I don't know, I wouldn't say I have a ton of experience with the legislature other than getting together with our senators and representatives, emails, phone call communication with them, our day at the Capitol, and same with the community groups. I think a big part of being a superintendent is being that lead for the district and that visible communicator. So the Chamber of Commerce or the City Council and the county, those people know who you are. You can have that dialogue. You can share and celebrate the good things that are going on with your school. But also when there's a time of need, when you need to pass an operating referendum or a bond issue or need something different with funding, they're going to listen to you if you've built that relationship with them.
All right, next question. What things do you do personally to take care of yourself in order to maintain the level of the superintendent position, like a work-life balance?
Well, right now I got a 58-minute drive to work every morning. So I got my wind up and my wind down time, which I would much rather have an 8 to 10-minute drive. And that's supposed to be kind of funny and catch your attention because I would like to work in Pelican. But I have some wind up and some wind down time at the end of the day. My wife who works in the Detroit Lake School District, we try to, after 6 o'clock, we try not to talk shop or talk school a whole lot. There's certain times we just need to talk and vent and share with each other. I referee some basketball and football at the high school and college level. That's kind of an out for me, where actually I can get out and get some exercise and be part of a game that I enjoy and mingle and work with people. I try to read as much as I can, and I wish I could make more time for that, to do some professional reading. Love spending time with my kids. If there's two things in this world that are the most valuable to me, it's my son Parker and my daughter Natalie. And to have them home during this distance learning piece and their online schooling, it's been awesome. So family time is huge for me. We get out and we pontoon and jet ski and ride around the lake. Love spending time with friends and doing things in the community. I shared with you at Monday's interview that one thing I really miss about being 57 miles away from the community where I work is the community and social aspect of the interaction. It's just different when you don't live there. And I understand that's my choice, but that's also my choice why I'm choosing to apply in Pelican. I want to be part of that. I miss, being a school leader and being active in things in our community, whether it's a church or a Lions Club or the Chamber of Commerce or Art in the Park or whatever that may be. Being active in the community is really huge and important to me, and that's one thing I'm hopeful to change here with the new job. But family time's huge. I love that. I got some great friends, joke and laugh and have a good time with them. And I guess those would be the things. I also, one thing I got to step back. One thing I love to do is I travel. One of my goals was to get to every Major League Baseball park. So I've been to every home park, and there's a group of about 4 or 5 of us guys that we started back in about 1990, and we tried to travel to every Major League park. So last June, I went with my wife and I and 2 dear friends of ours from Chicago. We went to Toronto and hit our last Major League park. So that was kind of something fun to check off the bucket list.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Nudell, how would you handle complaints or concerns?
I had a parent the other day that's a pretty good friend of mine came in and she says, I got a complaint and I got a concern. And I could tell she was kind of upset, and just to kind of lighten the mood with her. And again, she was a personal friend. I gave her a little 2x2 piece of paper. I said, fill out your concern on this piece of paper and mail it to me, will you? And the look on her face kind of caught her off guard, and she laughed, and we came in and we had a good visit. First thing is, and I'm teasing, I would never expect that, but I invite them in so we can have a conversation face to face. You know, it's pretty easy for somebody to want to call and have a big concern over the telephone. I think the biggest thing you got to do is listen. Sit and listen to people. Through email, it's hard to understand body language and tone and expression and all that sort of stuff, and same with over the phone. So I prefer to take the time to meet with somebody, whether they wanted to come to my office, we meet at the Muddy Moose, or I go to their place or find some neutral place to meet, but just to listen to them and hear them out. Oftentimes, if you just hear people out and hear what their concerns are, they feel good about sharing those. Oftentimes, they have some legitimate concerns, that things that need to be addressed. And if I heard them out, that's huge. I guess, though, I think it was Greg that asked the question. The first thing I would like to do is if they came and they had a complaint about one of our teachers or a bus driver or an administrator, the first thing I would do is ask them, have you talked to those people directly? Because I hope if people have a concern with me, how I've done things or treated them, or an experience they had with me, and they came to you as a board, the first thing you would do is say, hey, have you talked to Rob about this? Because I think ultimately those people deserve that respect first. If they have talked to me and still haven't gotten their questions answered, then I hope they go back to you. And that's the same with teachers and staff. They come to me, I want them to go to those people first. They don't get where they want, then come to me, or work their way up the chain, go from a teacher to administrator to superintendent.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nudell, tell us what process you would use to update district policies and how the policies are integrated into the school district.
You know, I think we use MSBA. They have a lot of sample model policies that we would take and use from there. Share those policies with the school board. We usually have a first and a second reading before we adopt those. But MSBA is our guiding force and gives us some direction with that, and see how that would affect and work with kids. I think working with my administrative team, if any of those policies really affected the elementary or the high school, or activities or whatever that may be, and I'm assuming that there's a subcommittee of the school board that's on the policy committee as well, where we go and review and look at those and keep those updated as well. But MSB is a huge go-to for us. I know we try to update those every few years in the district where I'm at, and get some guidance from them, and then make them personal to our district, so they fit Pelican Rapids. Because just because it comes out of St. Peter, where MSBA is, doesn't mean it's going to fit for Pelican Rapids. But usually they're generic enough and something we can work with to do that, to make them fit for us. Like I said, have a first or second reading, adopt them, and then make those known to our community and staff as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nudell, how will you work with and evaluate your admin team?
I think the first thing is, Mike, is to build trust and get to know them and sit and watch. I know you've got good people there. I know them on a personal level. I see them at your school. I see them out in the community. I know you've got good folks in a great leadership position there. So I think you work with them, find their strengths, and find areas that they maybe can improve on. We've all got things we can do better. Once you stop trying to get better and trying to stretch yourself, you're kind of moving backwards and not moving at all. So I think that's important, to give everybody, a pat on the back, use the sandwich approach, something that's going well, something you can improve on, and again, something that's going well. But we always need goals. The one thing I think I bring to the, not I think, the one thing I know I bring to the table is I've been an elementary teacher for 7 years. I've been a elementary principal, so I've walked in Derek's shoes. I've been a high school principal, so I've walked in Brian's shoes. Never saying I was the best principal or the best teacher or the best high school principal or even the best superintendent. But I've walked in their shoes. I have that experience. I can give them some ideas and suggestions, hopefully give them a couple things that they can, I don't even want to say work to improve on, a couple different ways to think about how to handle things, and maybe some ways to stretch them and improve. The collaborative approach, working with somebody is important. I never want them to look at me as their boss. I want them to look at me as a coworker. And when I offer them some feedback and do their evaluations, I know there'll be a lot of positives on there, but everybody I work with, I try to give them one or two things. Hey, have you thought about this? Or try this method or try this strategy. Maybe this will work for you and see what you think. It doesn't need to be threatening. It's just another set of eyes for somebody that's done what they've done. And I know being an elementary principal and then learning the high school principal role when I was in Frazee really helped me to be a better superintendent and a better person. Because now I understand the roles of the pre-K through 6, as well as the 7 through 12 and through graduation. So knowing that I've walked in their shoes, hopefully that carries a little weight with them. And they say, you know, this guy's done this and we'll try this. But the first thing is to build relationships with them and hopefully they respect my opinion because I know I'll respect theirs.
How would you prepare the board to make a decision on a politically sensitive or controversial issue?
Well, you know, I'll go back to my experience with that. I hate to keep beating a dead horse and talking about that elementary school, but when I first brought that up to the board, my board chair says, "Are you really ready to look for a new job?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Do you realize how sensitive this is going to be for the community of Gary and for our district? We know this should have been brought up, but superintendents usually don't last for this stuff. So if we get through this, you're probably going to be looking somewhere." And I said, you know, if we do a good job communicating and the board's really well informed and we plan a strategy and we all put our heads together and figure out what's best in our plan of attack. And this came up in my first or second year in Norman County East, and now I'm in my 4th year. So it took us a couple of years to get there. And I think by laying the groundwork with the board, telling them why, laying out the advantages and disadvantages of keeping it open and closing it and those sort of things is really important. So again, first you got to have the trust of the board, and I really believe I have that. And then just keeping them informed and looking at some different avenues and giving them time to make those decisions. As I shared with you earlier, I've learned patience through those 2 years. Right away, it's like, boy, this is so obvious. And I talked to 2 of my predecessors, and they said, yeah, good luck getting that building closed. We know this should happen, but it's really a sensitive, you know, deal to those 2 communities. And by being patient, spoon feeding the board that information, having that dialogue, having a budget meeting, having a personnel committee meeting, we were able to get that happen. Then having some community meetings so the community could ask questions and take time to process and informing people and letting them kind of formulate their own opinion, because it does take a while. And then we ensured that everybody, when we were going to close the building, nobody was going to lose their job. So financially, it was going to be a savings for our district. Nobody would lose their job because we know schools are one of the biggest employers in the districts and in the communities where they're at. So we made sure of that. And I think by slowing down, by learning patience, by keeping the board informed, being very transparent with them, it was just really what was best for kids. And the hard part was it didn't affect kids. There was a lot of those people that went to Gary High School or went to another place or went to that school that parents were having a harder time. So I think as we communicated effectively with them, were transparent and worked collaboratively with them, give them a chance to ask questions, it worked out. I don't think it could have worked out much better, to be honest. I hope that answered your question. It seemed like I jumped all over on that one. So if you've got a follow-up, I'll welcome it. I just know that was a political nightmare for a while where it could have divided the 2 communities, and it didn't. And our enrollment numbers are up, so I think it went well. If such a thing can go well, but I think it went smooth.
As you begin working with a new team of administrators, tell us how you would work to get to know the district leaders and their priorities for their departments. Please include your plan for administrative team meetings, structure, and time for meetings.
One, I'd like to sit with each of them individually and find out what they think is going well and what maybe are some areas of concerns or things we can address. I want them to feel the support from me because they'll have the support of me. Whether it's Rudy in the business office or Trevor with the buildings and grounds or Mr. Korf at the high school or Mr. Nelson at the elementary or whatever. So I think meeting with them individually and then looking at building a cabinet that we have monthly meetings, or however frequent we need to have those. Putting an agenda together, but having them bring ideas and putting the agenda out in Google Docs so they can bring questions, concerns, thoughts, or ideas. It's the whole collaboration piece. That's one thing I'm really looking forward to, the opportunity to work with an elementary principal and a high school principal and a buildings and grounds person. Because right now, in my current position, I'm elementary principal, I'm high school principal, I'm superintendent, and I oversee the custodians too. So I'm not afraid of work. I'm not afraid of doing those things. But I love the idea of collaboration and working with somebody. So I have those meetings, monthly, hopefully more frequently than that, because a team works well that way. Maybe it's weekly with the principals and go from there. But I want them to have a chance. It's not my agenda. It's our agenda. It's us working together to do what's best for kids. And however I can help and support them and guide them as well. And hopefully I can offer some experiences to them that will help them. I'm not sure if I made that clear to you in my first interview. We had our high school principal, due to some personal reasons, resigned right after Christmas. So I have been the elementary principal and the superintendent. And when she resigned here at Christmas time, the board said, why don't you just be the high school principal too? Because we don't have anybody else licensed in our district. We've since then hired a high school principal, but I got to tell you, from January to now, it's been really busy as wearing all three hats. I've tried to do the best I can managing time.
Thank you. Mental health is a growing and serious problem in our society. How have you developed and supported programs for students, staff, and the community?
Mental health is one of those things where there's, I think, a lot more questions than there are answers. And it sure seems like there's a lot more students, staff, community members that are suffering with some mental health issues. Currently, we work with Northwest Mental Health. They come into our buildings a couple days a week. We have some counselors that are some added support for us. In our district of 250 kids, we've got a social worker and a school counselor that works to meet the needs of those kids and families, as well as a school nurse. And through our county, we work and have some help and support there as well. I don't know if I have a ton of experience other than leaning on those people and identifying and knowing there's a lot of mental health needs with our kids. And I look at 4 years ago to now, and it seems like there's just way more mental health needs of our students. And if we don't address those, they're going to struggle learning at school. There's bigger things oftentimes than blowing the top off an MCA test and doing, exceeding the standards there. And we got to take care of their mental health and stuff first. And I talked to my staff about building relationships with kids and having that trusting relationship. We've now made through this distance learning with our staff, the high school, we took all of our teachers and we said, everybody's going to draft or take 15 different kids. And we're going to check in with them every other day, at least via Zoom, just to check in and see how kids are doing. Not worry about the academics, which are important. I understand that. But the mental health of these kids that are now at home, shelter in with their parents, sometimes not a very good environment at home with a mom or dad, or maybe just one or some dysfunction at home. So we worry about the mental health of kids. And that's something that when we all sat and talked about this in early March, when we knew we were going to try distance learning, we worried about the connection with kids and reaching out to them. So my staff and myself, we reached out to these kids 3 times a week, twice a week at least, just to check in with them and see how they're doing.
Thank you. Next question. Please share an example where you've made a mistake and how you dealt with the situation. And what did you learn and how did you move forward, regaining trust?
Well, if I can joke here just for a minute, I think there was a call this last December in the Pelican Rapids gym where I maybe made the wrong out of bounds call. And Mr. Korf stood up and yelled at me, so I blew my whistle and said, yep, I made a mistake, but we're going to have to move on. But no, actually, that's not the truth. He would know that I don't make many mistakes, reffing. A mistake that I've made, and how did we do that? I know there's been lots of mistakes. I'm just trying to think of just one that I can say how we did that. I don't know if I can think of a specific one, Greg, and I'm sorry if I can't, but I know we all make mistakes and we all do things that we wish we could have a do-over. And the biggest thing you can do is own it, wear it, and admit it. Because if you look at somebody who says, yeah, you know what, I screwed up, I wish I would have handled that differently, that kind of takes the power and the confrontation away when you admit that you've made a mistake. And trust me, I know I've made some. I'm just trying to think of a specific one, and one doesn't come to mind. But I think if you just turn around and look and say, yep, I made a mistake, I wish I could do it over, and try to make it right with them and learn and grow from them, that's the most important thing you can do. If you just sit and dig your heels in and try to justify, it's just going to add fuel to the fire. I really try not to make the mistakes, as we all do, and that's why learning the patience here the last couple of years has been very beneficial for me and helped, because I know in the role of a principal, when you're a high school principal and you've got stuff flying at you all day, whether it's discipline or something in the building or a staff concern or a parent concern, you're making decisions all the time. And as a superintendent, we've got decisions to make too, but it's just not rapid fire like that. So we've probably got some bigger decisions sometimes to make as a superintendent, but we oftentimes have time to think and to process and do those sort of things. So the patience, collecting your thoughts, thinking out the best strategy, thinking from every angle will help alleviate those mistakes. And if you make one, own it, wear it, admit it, and hopefully people respect your integrity for admitting that you made a mistake.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Nudell, we're down to our last two. You may remember these questions from Monday, but
Okay.
what questions do you have for us?
I do have a couple here, and a couple I think I kind of know the answer. Tell me a little bit about, where I'm at Norman County East. We joined the Lake Agassiz Special Ed Co-op that services Barnesville, Lake Park, Holly, SMU, and Hitterdall. Pelican Rapids, you're part of a special ed co-op, and is that the one out of Fergus Falls? And what's the involvement with the director or a coordinator that services your district? And if you guys don't know that, maybe one of your administrators does as well.
Yeah,
So if you can just tell me what it looks like, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we're a member of the Fergus Falls Special Ed Co-op, and as far as exact details, I can allow Brian or Derek to answer that.
Yep, we work with Fergus Falls Co-op, and what we do is we have a fall meeting and we have a spring meeting with them that we meet with the director and her staff. And anytime that we have any questions or need support, they're more than willing to work with us, meet with us here at the school, and help us with our concerns.
You feel that's going well, and that's a good deal with the director and the staff there. That's a positive thing.
Yep.
I'll add a little bit of something in there. Shannon Erickson is the director, who happens to be a Pelican Rapids resident and veteran, and just very well versed. And special ed co-op is to share costs, low incidences. So staff members are assigned to Pelican Rapids. They're shared with other districts depending on needs. But I think special ed co-ops for small districts, and even as Fergus is the largest one, where the fiscal host is there, it just really benefits financially for a district our size here at Pelican.
Absolutely. And Jerry, how many districts are part of that? Do you know? Is there about 6?
There's 8.
There's 8.
There used to be 9 with West Central area, but 5-6 years ago, they dropped out, but there's 8. It would be the ones surrounding Fergus for the most part, east, west, you get Breckenridge, Rothsay, Pelican, Battle Lake, Underwood. I think I'm missing someone in there.
Got it. Okay.
Ashby, yep.
Got it.
And I'm
I'm going to ask.
I'm on that board too.
Got it. I got a question for you 6 board members, and if each one of you want to answer, or if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But you 6 board members, what's one word, one characteristic, or one word you want to see in your next superintendent? If you feel comfortable answering, if you don't have to. But I'm looking for one word of a characteristic.
I'm not afraid to say it. Trustworthy.
I was going to use the word honest.
Transparent.
Brenda?
I was thinking trustworthy and a good communicator.
Awesome. Thank you.
Competency?
And then last two things for the board. If I'm fortunate enough to work with you, what would be one or two things that would be on the top of my to-do list from your point of view, on top of the priority list? I view it as getting to know the staff, being visible in the community, getting to know people, watching, listening, and learning. The first 100 days is what I would like to do. But I want to know what are one or two top priorities, if you would have as a board, that would be on top of my to-do list.
Establish trust and maintain fiscal stability and improve.
Okay.
Working with our business manager.
Perfect.
Anything else?
I would like to just expand on that for a second, if I could, John. Being a superintendent who's got 4 years of experience in the superintendent role and a little bit of some interim stuff during Frazee when they were going through a tough time, I do work with a $4.5 or $4.4 million budget, which I know doesn't compare with yours in size-wise. But since I've started working in that district, we went from about a 17% unreserved fund balance, and right now we're looking at about 36%. So each and every year we're working to save money. And part of the reason we've looked to do that is we knew maybe putting a roof on or closing the school was important. So I wanted to just to share that with you, that the fiscal management, from my point of view, from building a budget to working with my staff and the business manager and the school board, that I know money is always an important thing and a sensitive thing and something we need as a school. And I know from where you were at 3 years ago to where you're at now, there's been some reduction in funds and some different stuff has happened. But I want you to know my history is I'm a conservative guy. We try to look at where it needs to go for students, and our unassigned fund balances went from 17% to 36%. And I grabbed those numbers from our auditors here last Friday when I was in the office, and just to take a look at, try to stay on top of that. And I feel I've got some sound fiscal management and building a budget that way too.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Nudell, last one. In summary, I think I asked this last time. In summary, why should we hire you to be the next superintendent of Pelican Rapids?
You know what, Mike, I don't know if you should. You guys got to do what's best for your district. You, 6 board members, Mr. Ness, and the 2 administrators that I know are sitting in here, and I'm not sure if Rudy's part of the interview today or not, but you know what you're looking for in a leader, and I wish you nothing but the best. I want you to hire what you believe is the best one. I would like to think that's me. I'm somebody that I looked at your goals again this morning as I was getting ready, and the community engagement is something I'm starving for. It's hard for me to do that right now from 58 miles away. I want to be here. I want to be in your district. I'm not looking for just any job. I want one job, and that's the one I've applied for and that I'm fortunate enough to interview for today. It talked about community engagement, talked about educating the whole child, talked about increasing student enrollment, which I've spoken to before, and our numbers at Norman County East have increased, and the sound and transparent financial practices and management. I tried to share that with you as well, that our fund balance has increased. We're sitting really, really well. We've done some cost containments, and financially we're in a great spot. And that's not just me, but that's a little bit of me. If you want somebody that's going to work hard for you, learn, represent your district well, I got a lot of pride in myself because I want to represent me and my family well, but I want to represent you 6 board members as the board and the community of Pelican Rapids and the whole district in a real positive way. I love kids. I love working with people. I feel I'm an honest, trustworthy guy. I looked at some of the things you talked about. Honest, trustworthy, transparent. I've got nothing to hide. I want to work in Pelican Rapids. If that doesn't work, I got a great place where I'm at, but I would love the opportunity and would welcome that.
Okay. Thank you. Well, this completes our questions. So we appreciate you coming to visit with us, Mr. Nudell.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate the second interview and the time and the consideration. As I shared with you last time, you know, you can't ask this stuff. I'm 53 years old. I've got 12 to 13 years left that I want to work. I would love to work with you guys, and I look forward to your decision. And I hope to get a phone call either way tomorrow, John, if that works for you. And again, thank you for the time, and I really do appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I think just a little bit more on the process here. As you know, we have one more interview here at 3:30 with Mr. Froke, and then tomorrow morning, no discussion will take place following the 2 meetings with the whole board, the 2 interviews, I should say, and then tomorrow morning at 7:30 we meet again for a Zoom meeting. The board will then have discussion about both candidates, and then you know, the proposal is to make it a motion to extend an offer to one of the candidates. That's the intent. And then following that meeting, yes, John will have the pleasure of making 2 phone calls, and then negotiations. Actually, we're fast tracking, I would say. We'd love to have a signed contract by Monday night, so that can be approved at Monday night's school board meeting. So if you have any questions on process, just give any one of the administrators or John a call, and we can work through the details there.
Yes.
Jerry, I appreciate the details and the insight with that. I wish you well in your second interview, and look forward to hearing from you tomorrow. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Let's see.
So John, at this time, I think the recording should stop, and then at 3:30, when Mr. Froke comes online, the recording will be back online. So we have a little bit of here, 27 minutes was what I've got. So we'll be back at 3:30.
You're on. Okay. Yeah, I have 3:30.
Okay. Me too.
Again, welcome, Mr. Froke. It's going to be a similar format as last time.
Sure.
And a number of questions, and we'll divide them up by board members. And again, I'll introduce myself. I'm John Carter, board chair.
Mike Forsgren, vice chair.
Brittany.
Brittany Dockin.
Ann.
Ann Peterson.
And, yep.
Greg.
Greg Larson.
Brenda.
Greg.
Brenda Olson.
Hey, Brenda.
And I'll allow our administrative team to introduce themselves or say hi.
Brian Corf, high school principal.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Mr. Froke. Derek Nelson, elementary principal and activities director.
How you doing, Derek?
Good.
Good.
Rudy.
Hi, Rudy.
Yep.
Finance director.
Jerry Ness, interim.
All right.
Jerry's good.
Yep. Well, we'll allow Brittany to begin. Do you have any questions or issues AV video wise here before we get going?
I think I'm good to go. Everybody looks good on the screen. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Sounds good. Let Brittany kick it off.
Okay. Superintendent and school board are mutually dependent. Neither can function productively without the support and cooperation of the other. As superintendent, what strategies would you use to develop and maintain a positive working relationship with the school board members collectively and individually?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting how this all works out. How's the courtship been thus far? Because we've kind of been on a little bit of an introductory couple of dates here, haven't we? And the reason I put it that way is that because, you know, you maybe heard this before, that the board superintendent relationship is like a marriage. And it's very important that you implement the same types of tenets of a marriage, where communication and support for one another is paramount. And so I think that the idea around communication with the board, coming from the superintendent, has really elevated over probably, I'd say, the last 5 years or so. I think social media has had a lot to do with that, in terms of we're all out in Facebook and Twitter, and we're seeing the responses from the public on differing issues. And so therefore, we're constantly in a mode of trying to catch up. And so that forces the board, as they see things, and as a public steward and a public servant, that forces the board to kind of go, well, I wonder what's happening. I hadn't heard about that before. And all of a sudden, then we have to start working together to be out in front of issues as best we can. So the other part of that, so communication has become really a bigger part of the relationship that exists between board members and the superintendent. The other part I would talk about was just, you know, any issue that comes up. The public goes to the board a lot of times because they're my elected official. So sometimes we have to know what each other's doing with respect to handling that particular issue, and support one another. And we do that with information that about that particular issue. And so that's kind of the what you're looking for in that relationship: communication, frequent, and then also support for one another. Superintendent is sometimes referred to as being on an island. You know, you got to make sure that the superintendent has the supplies to operate on that island, and vice versa. You know, you want to make sure that the board member isn't caught in a position, and so it happens, I don't know. I'd much rather be, you know, this is what I think has happened, and this is why it happened, in an answer to help to your constituency. So those are two big pieces: support and communication, both ways.
A key component of the Pelican Rapids superintendent position is human resources. Describe your experience in human resource management and collective bargaining.
Sure. Good question, Ann. And I've been at all levels in terms of, as we talked about, you know, the differing levels of school districts. So in the school district, the size of Detroit Lakes, that was one of the first things that I did when I came in here in 2008. We had a position within the district office that was more fiscal or financial in nature, and I could see there was human resource elements scattered all over the place, and meanings that this principal had this group of employees, this district office person had this group of employees, and it was when I said, okay, we got to slow this down, and I took a recommendation to the board that we create a human resources department. And so we did a corporate raid on SJE Rhombus, and 12 years ago, then we hired the district's first HR director. So, and that handles everything from costing models of the employee groups to investigations, coordinating all of the employees that are up for hire. That changes as we go to Pelican Rapids, where the superintendent perhaps is the coordinating individual for hires and making sure that we're doing all the right things, where all the legal notices that a new hire has to have, where we do make sure that we're following the veterans preference law. Those kinds of things all kind of come into the superintendent's office, the district office, and that becomes at a more specific level, all of those kinds of things. As it relates to negotiations, we have to create those spreadsheets that show costing models and what the impact of a contract would be. That probably comes back into the superintendent's office in Pelican Rapids. And I perform the duties where negotiations is concerned based upon what the board wants the superintendent to do. Meaning, if the board wants me to be the negotiator in Pelican Rapids with the teachers group or all groups, and I'm the spokesperson, that's what I'll do. If the board does a lot of that work, that's great, and that's fine. And then I work in more of a supportive role. And that's where that whole support piece comes in. I think sometimes we talk about the fact that, do you want the superintendent who has to work with employees every day in the heat of negotiations? And sometimes board members say, we want to protect the superintendent, Doug. Or if they understand that if the superintendent is at the, is the one delivering the messages at the table, then the board members support that superintendent away from the table when those conversations about bargaining are taking place, because they do. And so anyway, human resources is a huge part of our job. Employment law is a huge part of our job daily. And the other part of this is that you have to be able to use your school district attorney to help you guide decisions around hiring, around employment law. So obviously they're a terrific resource. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you. With the dramatic changes in education due to the COVID-19 virus, how will you include the positive experiences learned in online learning and communicating with students and parents moving forward?
Oh, isn't that a great, that's another great question. What did we learn, from the experience? So as you talk about distance learning, I think one of the things that we want to emphasize, and I hope this answers the question for you, Anne, is that we found out that online learning, this is not online learning. And so I think we have to be, when we talk with parents about what we've just experienced, this was a tool to put together as quickly as the state could put it together. That being Pelican Rapids, it means Detroit Lakes, it means Fulda, it means North Branch, and because of the situation we are in. So we want to make sure and tell parents that don't confuse this with online learning. I'm going to say, I would bet, based upon surveys, and I don't know if the Pelican Rapids district surveyed the kids and parents when either right away or 3 weeks into the distance learning, but the majority of the kids liked it. We had kids logging in at 7. We had kids logging in at 10. I know Carson slept in till 10, got up at 10 and worked basically till 2:30. His day was done, kind of liked it. And we had kids logging in at 7 at night. So I think that's the main thing, that it's a tool. I think that's the conversation we use with parents. And I think we have to reference it as a tool because we don't know what September of 2020 looks like. And this may be a tool, a hybrid tool of what we'll be using, distance learning, of what we'll be using when we convene in the fall. But it could be, we could have the kids coming in 1 day a week and the rest is distance learning for the balance of the week. And maybe I'm sure that, Brian and Derek have maybe had some conversations with Jerry and the board about be thinking about this. How are we going to transport if social distancing measures stay in place? So we did great. I'll just say that. We did collectively across the state. I think we did really well, but it's not the end all. It's a tool.
Thanks, Mr. Froke. Next question. Two-parter. What do you consider to be the 2 or 3 major concerns facing public education in Minnesota in the next 2 to 5 years? And how do these concerns relate to the Pelican Rapids School District?
Well, I think one of the first things the easy answer to the question right away is is we're just faced with such uncertainty where the economy is concerned, and we maybe don't really have a great grasp on what our parents are experiencing. I think there's probably some stories out there that might surprise us with some families that maybe we think are doing okay from a financial standpoint. But we don't know what's going to happen to our economy. The Dow is down another 400 points today. So what does that mean for our K-12 institutions across the state? The reason I say that is that one of the lessons that you learn right away as a board member is we're married to the state. 80% of the finances that we receive at school districts come from state aids to education. So therefore, as the economy goes up and down, so is it that we go up and down. And of course, naturally, while we're going to be guaranteed for next year our 2%, going forward might be a little bit different story. How does that impact the Pelican Rapids district? Well, obviously, when we take a look at fund balances and cash positions, does that mean that we're going to have to look at cash flow borrowing to get us through the short times during the course of the year that might fall in November and December? So we want to look at that right away and maybe plan with a down economic time at the start of the 2021 school year. So, or 2021-2022 school year. So those are things to think about. I think the other thing, trends in education, I'm really not concerned. My emphasis has always been around, we have to start determining and establishing a better path for our kids as they leave our program at Pelican Rapids. Do they have a plan? What's that plan? The plan, I think maybe I referenced it on Monday, is the plan is not I'm going to college and then I'm going to decide on a major. We can't do that anymore, especially with the burgeoning student loan debt. We have to start integrating planning, career planning into their future as freshmen. And quite honestly, you could even start getting interest. But also, what is their aptitude? There are a lot of doctors out there, but do they have the aptitude to become a doctor? And so what do we do to help them find that career path that's realistic for them? So I think that the career pathway, the career pathway is a huge part of the development of the high school program. So and then the other thing would be, I'll label it all under mental health. The mental health needs, the socio-emotional needs of our kids has moved to the forefront of priorities for us as educators. The importance of relationships, the importance of being purposeful where relationships are concerned. When Mr. Nelson's out in the hallway, how often does he really go to a kid and talk about how's life, and how many kids does he touch in a day? An example of that is that the high school at Detroit Lakes, and I go in the morning, and at that about 8:10, that 8:10 time frame, that class started at 8:15. So I make the mistake of showing up at 8:10. So you know what's happening. The rush on the building is hot and heavy. I get caught holding the door, and I hold the door for kids as we're standing out there, and it might be 10 below zero, but I'm standing there holding the door. But I tell you what, kids remember that. And there'll be times when I'll run into a kid and they'll say, you know what, you held the door for me last time. Let me hold the door for you. And it's things like that that we have to be purposeful, and they can be as small as holding a door or holding the water fountain so they can get a drink. But just so that we do, as you do so well, as we referenced the 90% appreciation rate by our kids for your staff, those are things that we have to be purposeful about. Mental health, social emotional awareness, and I think you do a good job in that area, but it's only going to continue to grow.
Thank you.
You bet. Yeah, good question. Wow, that was a lot. You asked for 3, didn't you? Yeah.
2 or 3.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, Mr. Froke. This one's a shorter question.
Good.
Doesn't mean the answer is going to be short, but what would you do to positively impact student achievement?
Well, I think I don't have any magic bullet as it relates to student achievement, and I don't think anybody does. I don't think there's a clear recipe for how you increase student achievement in any district. There are certain tenets that we all have that are present. The development and then an emphasis on content standards. B, the development of professional learning communities and how they work as the conduit or the vehicle to help teachers mutually agree upon what content standards are going to be taught. We use the professional learning community to create formative assessments to determine what the kid knows about a content standard, and at a certain break point. We create those in the PLCs. We create summative assessments in the PLCs to again gain that deeper level of understanding for the kid, and us knowing as educators how they're doing. And then as you go forward, then those are all key components toward moving achievement or moving the needle where achievement is concerned in your district. The last component of the last piece of that is just flat out data analysis, and data analysis takes place in the PLCs as well. So all of those things have to be wrapped in and tied up in a bow. But what I think is different for where I may come a little bit is we really emphasize fidelity. And when we go through each of those, when we talk about what a PLC is supposed to do, focusing on results, focusing on the kid, we hold true to that. And if there are PLCs that are struggling and relationally and trying to establish and come to agreement on what should be taught, how it should be taught, then we intervene. And we're very committed to doing what's right, doing the right thing where PLCs are concerned. So I think that if I had to answer that question, the difference is holding true to what the real purposes are for our teachers and our departments in their teaming relationships by way of the PLC.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Describe an example of your ability to simplify and communicate a complex matter to others.
Well, I think that's where the teacher in me comes out. I taught for 7 years, and the other thing is, I really work hard to try and understand things at a core level. It gets difficult to try and go to a board meeting or go on the radio and explain a complicated issue in a very short period of time. The same holds true with the board meeting. We're in a board meeting and we have to articulately lay out the principles of an issue. And so you have to learn to condense that, and so that discussion then can take place around that issue. So you learn things about getting to the core of an issue and explaining those core principles, and let the discussion take place from there. We don't have a lot of time when we meet as a board and an administrator group. We don't have a lot of time. So you don't want that time to be spent with me going on and on about an issue. You want the tenets of the issue out on the table, and then the discussion goes out. So and that's where the specifics of the issue come when you need that deeper level of understanding. For me, and like I said, that's the teacher in me. I get at core, simple messages about the issue.
Okay, number 7. Describe your experience with negotiations. What role have you played in negotiations?
Both roles. In other words, I've been the messenger for the district in districts where we have to go in and we've learned a lot in that time. In the beginning years, as being the messenger, core messenger, you have your caucus and you talk about what the district's position is going to be, and then you go back into your employee group meeting, whatever employee group it might be. And it used to be when you're first starting out and younger and those kinds of things, no, and you learn that that doesn't work a lot of times. And what you work at as a messenger is that, okay, these are the issues that we're having difficulty with. How can you help us in that regard? Is there some movement that you can see on this issue? Because these are the issues that we're having, and really lay out from our positions from a district perspective as to what the district is able to tolerate. So I've done both. The other part is that been on both sides of the issue, as I indicated, where maybe the board members, because of them wanting to have a relationship with that bargaining group, they do a lot of the presenting and a lot of the positioning and those kinds of things. And maybe my role is provide the supportive documentation and the supportive advice where, okay, if you do this, keep in mind that the counter move is going to be this. And that can be my role too, as an advisor to the board, based upon the experience that we've had over the years in negotiating. Seen a lot of different things happen. And so you kind of get a feel for what bargaining units do when it gets down to that final couple volleys of proposal exchanges. So again, I've done both, and I'm very comfortable with both. But the other part of that is, whatever role you want me to play as a board, that you support me in that role, and vice versa. I support you in that role.
What experiences have you had working with legislators, other superintendents, and other community leaders?
Sure. Just had an experience this morning. We just as an example, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 o'clock, the city administrator, the county administrator, the head of Sencha Hospital, the head of the Sanford Clinic, the head of the Ministerial Association, the superintendent of schools, the head of the community center, and the head of Becker County Public Health, the emergency management position administrator, all meet in this format in the Zoom chat, and we talk about everything that's going on relative to statewide implications around COVID-19 and then also then the local community. We were given an update, and then there were 28 cases in Becker County to date, and we talk about things like masking, PPE, the gowning, those kinds of things. We talk about all those things and their availability here. We talk about volunteerism for our people who aren't able to get out, things like that. So community members and those kinds of things were very, very connected to the city and the county, because we were obviously worked so close together. Another example, 2 weeks ago, we're in a public hearing with the city of Detroit Lakes, the construction project. We're taking away 25 parking spots at the high school parking lot, so we have to get a variance. You know, those things happen. They have their public hearing. We work outside of that public hearing to make sure that we're meeting everything that the city needs. You may have seen, I think in my resume or I had as a reference, Representative Paul Marquardt. You know, Paul Marquardt, we called Paul Marquardt to talk about, this is my position on an issue. Paul, this is the district's issue. It needs help here. And quite honestly, he calls me, Doug, I got this bill up. What would you think if this bill happened? And now those are the kinds of relationships that you want to have with your legislator, constant back and forth on issues, because you may need them sometime to carry something for the Pelican Rapids School District. And so, yeah, absolutely. Those are key component, regular relationships. And the other thing that's interesting too is what you try and do, even though it's harder. I spend about I'd say every 3 months, right next door is Colin Peterson. What are you dealing with? And if he's here, we'll have a cup of coffee and we'll just talk about things, nothing heavy. But someday we may need Colin Peterson, right, to do something for the Pelican Rapids School District. And those relationships are huge to form right away and do it often. It's most of the time it's how you doing, you know, and that. But he also can call me by, you know, my Mr. Froke or Doug or whatever, and know who's calling him. And the other thing is, when you get to that level, it's mostly aides. They're aides, so you try and work with those folks. But anyway, so I hope that answers the question. All those relationships with people in the cities and in the counties are important. And that would be one of the things that I would do right away is hired in Pelican Rapids. One of the first stops is a city council meeting and an introduction, and then Otter Tail County and those kinds of things. So those are key people for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question. What things do you personally take care of yourself in order to maintain the level? Let me rephrase that. So what things do you do personally to take care of yourself in order to maintain the level of the superintendent position, like a work-life balance?
Work-life balance, yep. You know, that's a great question. The couple different places. The first thing I do when I get home at night from the work, we call it the trouble tree. And that trouble tree is in the garage. It's not a tree, it's obviously imaginary, but that trouble tree is a reminder that I drop everything and I don't go into the house from the garage bringing school issues with me or work issues with me. It's just a constant reminder. Heard it a long time ago. My wife, Colleen, and Carson and Connor don't need that. I'm guessing, you know, both of them have had their own issues during the day, so they don't need to know what Dad dealt with. So you work really hard at that. The next thing is that I try and work out a lot. That's a big stress reliever, so it's pretty much every night is some form of elliptical workout or anything. And the reason is because there's a more important piece of health that's even more critical. Workout and it helps you sleep. And the more sleep you can get, the more rested you are, the more your brain functions better, and you handle stress better. So those are key components. And then you have to have a hobby, and our hobby is yard work in the spring and those kinds of things. So and then finding a core group of friends that you can trust. And those are all personal things. So anyway, big stuff. That's a great question because it's a big part of my life.
Thanks, Mr. Froke. Next question. How would you handle complaints or concerns?
Well, first of all, and that's kind of as an ex officio member of the board, the superintendent has things in place from a policy standpoint that the board has set up related to complaints and concerns. So that I'll call it, that political piece is in place. You have set that up in the policies that you've approved. So that's a main tenet of how we deal with complaints and concerns. All right. And of course, you've probably heard it. We're following the line of authority. We hear a complaint. Have you talked with the teacher? Have you talked with Mr. Nelson? Have you talked with Mr. Korf? Those kinds of things. And, I want to emphasize that because so many times what happens is that, and again, I'll come around here in just a second, but what you find out is if those things aren't followed, relationships get hurt. Okay. And I'll give an example. So we have a teacher. We have an issue with a teacher, and a parent comes to me as superintendent, and I go to work and start addressing things with the teacher, and Mr. Nelson knows nothing about it. Well, right away, what does Mr. Nelson think of me? Doug just ran roughshod right over the top of this, and so that's why those things are in place. You want to be able to solve things at the level at which they happen. So anyway, so that's all, that's in place for us. The other thing is the flip side of that issue. Again, we're not minimizing, because those are policies that the Pelican board has put in place. The flip side of that issue is you also want to be empathetic and helpful. And give people an opportunity to talk and find out what the issue is. You need to know what the issue is so that you can direct them to the appropriate place. You're not going to be very pleased with me if a parent comes up to you and said, "Hey, I went to Doug and he blew me off." You don't want that. You don't want your superintendent out in the public and saying visible and those kinds of things, and not being empathetic with people, the challenges that people have with the school and maybe the education of their child. We'll listen, and we may have an idea about what might work, but we have to make sure that relationships are preserved. So, and that means relationships with parents, relationships with all of our staff people.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Froke, tell us what process you would use to update district policies and how the policies are integrated into a school district.
Well, I'm going to guess that, and did I see something where you guys have a policy committee that meets frequently?
We do, yes.
Perfect. I mean, that's perfect. I'm having that difficulty right now in that, and that's what I would like to see here in Detroit Lakes is a dedicated time by the board to study policies. We get the revisions from MSBA and a dedicated time to look at those revisions. And then, of course, as you have the committee approach, committee doing the legwork of studying the policy and then bringing it to the board for approval. And I'm guessing you do a couple of readings on those policies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. With the idea that, you know, policies, you want to make sure you're being transparent with the public and laying those policies over for whatever, if you go 2 readings on a policy before approval or 3, making sure that you've got that out in the agenda so that the public knows that, you know, you're enacting the new policies in these areas and they have ample time to be able to contact you going forward. But that committee thing, that's a great idea, and it keeps your job, one of your main jobs is establishing policy. And I think it even talks about the fact that boards are supposed to look at 1/3 of the policies a year. And so that committee approach is perfect. So I really like it.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question? Did that go where it needed to go?
It did answer it. Yes, correct.
How will you work with and evaluate your admin team?
Yeah, it's you know, with the Pelican Rapids district, I can see that I bet it's a fairly tight knit group, and so you need to work together and need to understand each other's issues and where the positions that you're in. One of the things that I think someone just told me a little bit ago was, you're kind of a superintendent's kind of a coach. I made the mention the other day, you know, you hire good people and you let them do their job. Okay. And then the superintendent kind of off on the sidelines. And when when there's an opportunity there to uplift, we uplift. And when there's an opportunity to say, you know, I saw this, you know, did this happen? I heard this happen. Is this true? Did you think about how, I'm just going to put this out there. This is kind of how I saw it. And, you know, going forward, maybe this is an approach you should take just as a coach. And again, coach constantly uplifts. And when we have that opportunity, or maybe we need to, you know, something needs to be handled differently, we do that in an evaluative standpoint or an evaluative setting, and work through those issues, and trying to get people to perform at their best. So that's kind of my role, is using my years of experience in the school setting, and obviously from different locations and different situations might apply to something in Pelican Rapids that might help some of our administrators. So again, a coach, a mentor, that kind of thing. And of course, there is an evaluation every year that we write out, and we don't, you know, we have those conversations, and it's a great time to talk about what does the future hold for one of the administrators. What are things that you want to work on going forward?
Okay, thank you.
How would you prepare the board to make a decision on a politically sensitive or controversial issue?
We're gonna, you know, you try and have the foresight on an issue that may be on the horizon, that provides us in a board superintendent relationship to have enough time to maybe privately vet an issue one-on-one, meaning maybe I'm going to bring in Ann and I'm going to talk to Ann about the issue. This is kind of what I see is happening. This could be that I can see this coming to the board and landing on the board's table in about 4 months. Brenda, this is happening. I can see this coming to the table in about 4 months. Just going to let you know, these are the core pieces of the issue. I want you to think about it, and then we'll continue to dialogue on that. The other thing I would, and as the issue becomes closer to 4 months, then it becomes closer to being a public issue. And so one of the things that you want to do then is, as it's becoming a public issue, is being, as we talked on Monday, being transparent, right, about that issue. But you have to have the background information early to be able to articulate your position, be able to articulate the issue as you sit in public and talk about the issue. And so we try and get these things lined up and planned out so that you can talk about the issue in public without a level of, or with a level of confidence, so that you can make a decision that's in the best interest of the kids. I think that's one of the things, we talked about the other day too, is knowing when is a big issue. That's what experience gives you, is you can see the when coming toward us, and that provides us time to study issues. Work sessions are a great thing. They can help us in those issues. If we want to take a work session on some first Monday of the month, I think Pelican Rapids meets on the third Monday of the month. And so maybe meet on the first Monday of the month. You have a couple weeks to get ready for that decision. So. Good questions.
As you begin working with a new team of administrators, tell us how you would work to get to know the district leaders and their priorities for their departments. Please include your plan for administrative team meetings and structure and time for meetings.
Sure. Oh wow, that's that got specific. I think you may have received an entry plan from me that I put together for the first 100 days in Pelican Rapids, and in that first 100 days, or in that entry plan, I think it's very close, depending upon their work schedule, in terms of when they come to work to start the school year. We may be an understanding that we may be different this year with COVID and what we might have given to us in the fall. So that planning, that means a different form of planning. We may have to look at things differently, of who's going to come to school and when, where our kids are concerned. So all that's kind of separate, but under normal circumstances, part of the getting to know the administrative staff is both from a collective standpoint, meaning group, and then from an individual standpoint. So I think those are key components to getting that relationship started. I need to know a lot about the Pelican district. The administrative staff has a lot of that information. And so it's important that we get off on a great first step, and I use them to provide me with the information that I need to be successful. And so they need, I'm going to need them a lot. So one of the typical things then, that as we start the journey together down the road of providing educational services for kids, is getting this plan off the ground and running. And that includes both, like I said earlier, individual meetings with the administrators to get to know them personally and what they're about, because that filters into what they do professionally. And so we start that way with interviews. What do you think we do well? What are the things that we need to do differently? And how would we go about doing that? And so we start out with that. The other thing is that I think there's, as you asked for a timetable, administrative meetings typically, and I can remember being in Wyndham, we met once a week. You know, the principals, we had that principal administrator meeting and the business manager, buildings and grounds once a week. And it was very, you know, we spent a lot of time, but those we have to keep the lines of communication open. It's a little different in Detroit Lakes. I see the principals twice a month, in that we spend time on the board meeting Monday, and then that we deal with all sorts of HR issues, hiring, issues that are present around us, and then the second meeting of the month is straight curriculum issues. So I would see that the idea of the weekly meetings continuing or starting immediately, so that and mostly that would be for me, just to hear what they're thinking, and what issues are out there coming our direction. So and you can see then is that I think I laid that out there on the administrative staff with the administrator back to school retreat, gathering or retreat in early August. It's important for our the administrative staff to understand each other personally, and I learned that here. So it's a big deal.
All right. Next question. Mental health is a growing and serious problem in our society. How have you developed and supported programs for students, staff, and the community?
Yeah, basically, that's been done, contracted out with mental health providers. Again, the time my experience with mental health has basically happened. I'm sure the growth has been significant in the last probably 5 to 7 years. So prior to that time, it was pretty much individual therapeutic, something between the county and the family. We intervened with the school, thinking that maybe there might be the need. Up until, you know, like I said, that was 5-10 years ago. Since that time, it's really worked its way into the school, because before then it was mostly those children in need of special education services. Now it knows no boundaries, and so we have many children who are dealing with stressor type issues, and so we have to have those practitioners, mental health therapists in our buildings, and so that has grown exponentially. I think the commitment now in Detroit Lakes, I think I mentioned the other day, is up over $350,000 per year. And of course, naturally, in some cases, we're able to bill for those services and get some reimbursement back by way of MA billing. So that's helpful, but it is only going to be a larger issue going forward, and yet you just have to be cognizant of that and making sure it's on your agenda as an administrative team and as a board, that these are going to be committed resources going forward into the future.
Please share an example where you've made a mistake and how you dealt with the situation. And what did you learn, and how did you move forward regaining trust?
Okay, so I'm just gonna pick a situation here that I wish I could have it to do over again, and you know, I think Mr. Nelson and Mr. Korf might be aware of the situation that I'll reference here, because in that it hung around too long. And we had when I came right away as a new superintendent in Detroit Lakes, we had a situation with our activities director and a coach. The activities director's son was competing and at the varsity level. And one night didn't get the playing time that maybe the son or the activities director didn't think was appropriate. So the AD, and the son, about 20 minutes after the game, went up into the gym in front of the media and in front of parents and confronted the coach in a pretty hostile manner, used some language. But the biggest component was that the AD then broke the rule that all parents sign, is that if you have issues with the coach regarding playing time or after a game, you wait 24 hours. And those are things that are all signed. And he confronted the coach right after in a very hostile manner. Well, the thing about it was that brought him in. I'll apologize. Okay, at that time, both new to the district. The AD was a hometown boy. And at that time, we did not know if it was the politically correct thing to do to take any other action, but we disciplined in writing. And then we also made him apologize to the coach. That's all fine and dandy, and we thought we could move on. The mistake was the coaches, the entire coaching staff from that point on had absolutely viewed the AD with no credibility whatsoever. And it was a constant battle. And at that point in time, even though it was hard and probably would have been a challenging thing for me as a first-year superintendent, that was a decision that should have been made where, because the credibility of the position was compromised, we probably should have gone another direction and hired a new activities director, but we didn't. And those issues persisted for years after that time until we finally had to take a stand and go a different direction. My point and what I learned there is when there's a situation like that, and we should have recognized that the relationship with the coaching staff was compromised at that time, right then and there, and we should have made a decision there. And yet we instead took the position that we could help, that we would continue to work with the person, and it just never got any better. And in the end, when those things don't get better, then it's a reflection on you as an administrator, is whether or not you're doing your job. So that was hard. And that's what I learned. Make the move. Yep. For 5 minutes of pain, make the move for someone that is not going to be that stepped in the wrong direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard one. Wow. Yeah. We make mistakes every day.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah.
The next two questions are going to be strikingly similar to what you remembered on Monday, but the next one will be, what questions do you have for us?
Oh, so I wrote down here that what quality do you think separates you from neighboring districts?
I think work culture within the district with staff, students, and parents.
And teachers.
Would be mine. Yep.
Teachers and admin. I think we have a very close group. I think obviously our diversity sets us apart from other districts. And I think we celebrate our diversity, and we're proud of it.
I think that's one of the things that I've picked up here in the last, in the time that we've been involved, is just the staff and the tightness around the staff and the administration. So that's a good thing. And that was really a strong message that I've gotten in talking with people, and not just in the interview setting, but just asking people who are familiar with the Pelican Rapids schools in the community.
Anybody else want to add anything? Okay.
I just think that I know it happens everywhere, but in the last 18 months, we've just had a lot of loss within our school. And I think it's brought everybody together, the community, the teachers, the admin, everybody together. And we've had to be there for one another. And it's just created an atmosphere where I think everybody is thriving, and just something that we want to continue to carry on.
And I feel it too. As strange as that may seem, like I said, I think on Monday I talked about maybe that for the first time, most of the time when you get a job like in Detroit Lakes, it's I got a job, I've got a job in Wyndham. The situation and the events in Pelican Rapids, it was what obviously this was I felt an opportunity to serve, and this was an opportunity to become a superintendent and focus on serving and helping. And I hope I could, if I'm selected, I'm going to work really hard to integrate into that culture of togetherness. And sometimes that when you hire that superintendent, a lot of people get nervous that oh my gosh, what's that superintendent going to bring in, and that kind of thing. I know that anxiety is there, and so I also know the situation. I think I have a pretty good handle on your situation relative to what needs to happen. Grieving, healing, moving on and trying to make the district better for kids, with all of the issues in mind that you've dealt with, and we're never going to forget. And so I think I really have a genuine interest in serving. And so if I can help in any way, shape, or form in that regard, that's what excites me about the Pelican Rapids superintendency.
Okay. Thank you.
The board did a great job. Board and administrators have done a great job navigating that crisis. Obviously we watched from afar and how the community came together, and you're at the central piece of that orientation and that development of togetherness. And so you did a really good job in that regard.
Thank you.
Okay, last one, Mr. Froke. In summary, why should we hire you to be the next superintendent of the Pelican Rapids School District?
Well, right away, I would tell you that I like I said, I just hit on the whole issues around, the nervousness. I think I'm going to bring that experience, knowing that where people are at in terms of concern. We're going to work on getting, even dealing with the pandemic. We're going to work on relationships. We're going to work on working toward improving the financial position of the district. We're going to work on making sure we continue the good things that have been happening in Pelican Rapids. I got a kick out of the Covey approach and the leader in me. Those are all things that were initiated that are really quality stuff as we look forward to doing what we can do for kids to get that plan in place. So I think I bring that level of experience that you're looking for, a guy that's solid and stable and knows what the situation is here. And so I think that gives you that rationale. why I might be the fit for you. And like I said too, the other part of it is, the other part of this is that I'm really excited about the opportunity, because like I said, it's for the first time I really get an understanding of service and an emotional, almost an emotional attachment to wanting to help and wanting to do something because of what I've been able to do over the past 24 years in Minnesota. And so that you're getting it here today, genuine, trying to tell you what I think. And I think that bringing all the school operations, the financial acumen, and just the understanding of what the situation is and where you folks are at and what I think you need, I bring that to the table. And I think that's a reason why you should hire me.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're at the end of the questioning here, so sure appreciate your time this afternoon.
You bet. You bet. I appreciate your time, and I hope the interviews have gone well.
Yeah, we've enjoyed them.
So. Yeah, you bet. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call.
Okay.
You are kind of deliberating tomorrow. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. We'll be adjourning after this, and then tomorrow morning we'll be meeting again to go over this.
Very good. Well, good luck to you. This has been very comfortable, and you've done a great job. And just know that I remain excited about the possibility.
Okay. Well, appreciate it, Mr. Froke.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one. You bet. Take care.
Take care.
I think at this point, John, you'll just remind people about the meetings and do your adjournment, and we'll meet again right away tomorrow morning at 7:30. I think that would be appropriate right now.
Yep. Upcoming meetings, we have a special school board meeting, and that'll be to extend the offer position of superintendent of schools. That'll be tomorrow, May 14th at 7:30 a.m. And we'll be doing that by Zoom and the district office. And regular school board meeting is next Monday, the 18th at 6 p.m. And again, we'll be using Zoom in the district office. So I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Motion by Brenda. Usually Greg does the motion, so. Greg will second. Any discussion on adjourning? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and we'll do it roll call. And we'll start at the top of the screen. Brittany?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.